I spent 7 years building the very product that turned Velocity Dynamics from a struggling startup into a $500 million tech leader. 7 years of 18-hour days, missed holidays, and countless sleepless nights. I was the chief systems engineer, the person who knew every line of code, every integration point, every single vulnerability. Because I built it. The product? PulseLink, a real-time logistics management system that powered major corporations worldwide. It was the backbone of our company. Without it, Velocity Dynamics would crumble. And yet, standing there in the middle of the conference room, in front of the entire executive team, department heads, and even junior employees, CEO Graham Foster smirked like he had just won the lottery. "Congratulations, Kathy. You're terminated," he said, sliding a severance envelope across the polished glass table like it was some kind of prize. I stared at the envelope for a second, then at Graham, that arrogant little grin pulling at the corner of his mouth. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched eagerly like they were front row to a gladiator fight. "Effective immediately," he added with that oily corporate tone. "We're restructuring. You know how it is." Yeah, I knew exactly how it was. I also knew something Graham didn't. I calmly stood up, unclipped my badge, and placed it gently on the table. Then, I leaned forward, just enough for my voice to carry, but not enough to seem dramatic. Then I paused, letting the silence hang. "You explained to the investors why PulseLink goes offline in exactly 9 minutes. The room froze. Graham blinked. "Excuse me?" I smiled, the kind of smile that never quite touches the eyes. "Check the monitoring dashboard. I'm sure you'll find the countdown running." A nervous shuffle rippled through the room. Someone opened their laptop. Someone else bolted for the door. The HR director's eyes went wide as saucers. And then the panic started. Graham's fake confidence evaporated like mist in sunlight. He stood up so fast his chair skidded backward. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Instead, I straightened my blazer, picked up my small cardboard box, the one they so graciously provided for my personal belongings, and walked calmly toward the door. As I reached the doorway, I glanced back just long enough to see the CTO frantically typing, 2 engineers sprinting toward the server room, and Graham jabbing his phone, probably calling anyone, who could fix this. 8 minutes now, I said softly, then stepped into the hallway. Let me back up for a second. This didn't happen overnight. When I joined Velocity Dynamics, it was a scrappy startup operating out of a shared co-working space. There was no product, just an idea on a whiteboard and a desperate CEO pitching investors on promises he couldn't deliver. I was the one who designed PulseLink from scratch. I built the architecture, wrote the critical systems, debugged the endless problems that would have sunk any lesser team. For years, Graham praised me publicly. "Kathy's the backbone of this company," he'd say. "Couldn't do it without her." Investors loved hearing that. Employees respected it. Until they didn't. About 6 months ago, something shifted. Graham started getting cagey in meetings. My access to financial projections quietly disappeared. Conversations stopped whenever I entered a room. I wasn't naive. I'd seen this before. The classic, "we don't need her anymore" play. They'd raise a new funding round, hire some hotshot junior engineers on half my salary, then push me out under the guise of restructuring. And last week, I saw the paperwork on the printer. A draft contract offering my job, to some kid named Connor. 2 years out of college, no real-world experience. But hey, he worked for cheaper. That's when I realized Graham wasn't just replacing me. He was erasing me. My name was being scrubbed from the patents, the press releases, and the internal documentation. But what Graham didn't know was that I had seen it coming. And I had prepared. See, PulseLink wasn't just a logistics system. It was a living, breathing network of interconnected systems, one that I had architected to be both resilient and highly sensitive to unauthorized control. 6 months ago, when I saw the signs, I embedded something. A failsafe. Not malicious. Let's be clear. Just a protective protocol. If certain credentials were revoked, mine, specifically, the system would assume it was under hostile takeover. And then, automatic lockdown. Not deletion, not damage. Just offline. Everything. Servers, APIs, front ends, back-end processes, the entire infrastructure. Dead. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear voices shouting behind me. Call it now. What the hell does she mean offline? Is the database backed up? I hit the elevator button and waited. Calm, controlled. Hands steady, heart steady, because Graham had made one catastrophic mistake. He assumed I was just a cog in the machine. What he didn't realize was that I built the machine. And in exactly 7 minutes, he was going to learn just how fragile his empire really was without me. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone had already buzzed with 7 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. I opened my car door, slid in, and just sat there for a moment, watching the clock on my dashboard. 0000, and right on cue. PulseLink went dark. Not just the internal systems, not just the test servers. No, the entire production network collapsed. Global clients, offline. Shipment trackers, gone. Warehouse integrations, dead. Velocity Dynamics, the darling of the supply chain industry, just became an expensive brick. I could almost picture it. Graham staring at his screen as error messages multiplied like wildfire. Frantic engineers scrambling to reboot servers only to realize nothing was coming back online. My phone vibrated again. This time, a number I recognized. Rachel, the company's operations director, one of the few decent people there. Someone who, deep down, probably knew this was coming. I let it ring, then sent it straight to voicemail. Not yet. Let them sweat. I drove home. No rush. Picked up coffee on the way, even chatted casually with the barista who had no idea the chaos unfolding a few miles away was my doing, or rather the consequence of their own greed. By the time I stepped through my front door, my inbox was flooded. 12 missed calls from Graham, 6 from Rachel, 2 from the CTO, Mark. A desperate text from an unknown number. Please call. Please, the system is down. We need to talk. I set my phone down, ordered Thai food, opened Netflix, played an old sitcom I'd seen 100 times, the kind where nothing serious ever happens. Because unlike Graham, I wasn't panicking. An hour later, a knock. Loud, insistent. I checked the peephole. Not security, not lawyers, not yet. Rachel. And behind her, slightly out of breath, Mark, the CTO. I opened the door, slowly, deliberately, just wide enough to raise an eyebrow. Oh, fancy seeing you two here. Rachel's face was tense. Kathy, we need to talk, now. Seems sudden. Last I checked, I didn't work for you anymore. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A misunderstanding? Which part? The firing? The severance envelope? Or the part where you tried to erase my name from my own creation? Rachel sighed, glancing at Mark. Can we come in? Please. I considered it, then stepped aside. Shoes off. They shuffled in awkwardly, like kids called into the principal's office. I sat, crossed one leg over the other, and waited. Mark started. Look, the system. PulseLink. It's, offline. I finished for him. Catastrophic failure, full-stack lockdown. Clients are screaming, investors are probably circling like vultures. Am I getting warm? He swallowed. Dead on. Rachel jumped in. Look, Kathy, we get it. We handled this wrong. Graham, he was impulsive. But this can be fixed. You can fix it. I leaned back. Can I? You have to, Mark blurted. This could destroy the company. Millions in contracts, lawsuits, it's... He stopped, realizing how desperate he sounded. I let the silence hang, long enough to make them uncomfortable. Then finally, I spoke. Let me guess. Graham didn't send you because he's too busy screaming into a phone somewhere, or maybe hiding under his desk. Rachel exchanged a glance with Mark but said nothing, which was confirmation enough. I stood, walked to my desk, opened my laptop, typed a few keys. The dashboard loaded. And there it was. A sea of red alerts. Critical failure, authentication chain broken, core operations halted, node integrity compromised. Mark leaned forward, eyes wide. Wait, you still have access? I smiled. Of course I do. I built the back door 6 years ago. Didn't think I'd ever need it. Guess I was wrong. I turned the laptop toward them. See this? I pointed. The system isn't broken, it's protecting itself. When my credentials were revoked, it assumed hostile takeover. Standard security protocol. If you were paying attention during development meetings, Mark. His face flushed. Rachel buried her face in her hands. So, you can bring it back online, right? Rachel asked quietly. I closed the laptop. That depends. On what? I stood. Walked back to the living room window, looking out at the city skyline. My city, my company, or at least the one that should have been mine. It depends, I said, turning back to face them, on how much you're willing to pay, to buy back what you tried to steal. Rachel blinked. You're serious? I crossed my arms. Dead serious. You wanted PulseLink without me? Fine. You found out what that feels like. Now, if you want it back, we negotiate. On my terms. Mark scoffed. This is extortion. I tilted my head. No, Mark, this is business. You taught me that. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, full of realization. Rachel finally spoke. What exactly do you want? I smiled, slowly, letting the tension build. Oh, we'll get to that. But first, I think Graham should be here for this conversation. Don't you? Mark opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then shut it. Because he knew. They both knew. The girl they thought they could discard just became the one holding all the cards. 15 minutes later, the sound of screeching tires echoed from the street. I didn't even need to check. I knew exactly who had just arrived. Sure enough, moments later, a rapid, frantic knock rattled my door. 3 sharp bangs. The kind of knock that screams, "Open this door before I kick it down." I let it sit for a beat. Then 2. Then 3. Then slowly walked over and opened it, just enough to see Graham Foster. Disheveled, flushed, tie loosened, shirt untucked, sweat staining under his collar. The arrogant CEO who had smirked while firing me hours ago now looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, staring at the abyss. You think this is funny? He barked, pushing his way inside without waiting for an invitation. I didn't move. Just let him stomp in like a toddler mid-tantrum. Rachel and Mark stood off to the side, awkward, silent. They knew better than to interrupt. Graham spun toward me, his eyes wild. Turn. It. Back. On. Now I raised an eyebrow. You seem upset, Graham. Stressful day? He jabbed a finger in my face. You're playing with fire, Kathy. This is sabotage. Criminal. You'll never. Careful. I interrupted, voice calm, measured. You're one bad sentence away from making this personal. He froze, jaw tight, breathing heavy. But behind all that bluster, I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Because he knew. He knew exactly how bad this was. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, turned it toward him, showing the disaster he was drowning in. 92% of client operations, offline. 137 service-level agreements breached. 24 pending lawsuits incoming. Investor group chat. Is velocity collapsing? I gestured casually. Look familiar? Graham's fists clenched. You're bluffing. Rachel shook her head. She's not. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I checked. The clients, they're all calling. Our email servers are flooded. Mark added quietly. We had to shut down the client portal. It kept throwing corrupted data. They think we've been hacked. Oh, you've been hacked, all right, I said, folding my arms. By your own arrogance. Graham's face shifted, fury flickering into something smaller, desperate. Fine, he hissed. Name your price. I let the silence drag, watching him squirm. Let it marinate. Then I walked to my bookshelf, pulled out a folder. Not a laptop, not a drive. A folder, paper, analog, untouchable. Here's how this goes, I said, laying it flat on the table. I give you the protocol to restore PulseLink. Clean, no bugs, no backdoors. Full operational integrity. His eyes narrowed. And, I smiled. And I take what was always mine. 50% ownership of all PulseLink patents, retroactive and future. Full reinstatement as CTO, effective immediately. A board seat, permanent. A personal buyout of $15 million for attempted removal and breach of intellectual trust. And one more thing. I leaned forward. A public statement, signed by you, the board, and the investors, acknowledging me as PulseLink's sole inventor and architect. No exceptions, no watered-down PR spin. Graham's mouth fell open. You're insane, that's theft. I laughed. No, Graham, theft is what you tried. What I'm doing, this is restitution. Silence. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. Rachel didn't even try to argue. Her gaze stayed locked on the table. You don't have a choice, I continued. If PulseLink stays down another hour, Velocity Dynamics is finished. Your stock tanks, investors pull out, clients sue. Your entire empire? I snapped my fingers. Gone. Graham paced, running both hands through his thinning hair. 15 million? You're out of your mind. 15 million, I repeated, is the discount rate, because without PulseLink, this company isn't worth $15. He glared. And if I refuse? I didn't flinch. Then PulseLink stays offline, and you can explain to the New York Times, TechCrunch, and the SEC why your flagship product crashed after you fired its only architect. Oh, and let's not forget the investors' class action lawsuits. Should I forward you their lawyer's contact info now or later? His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. Rachel finally spoke. Quiet, but firm. She's right. Graham whipped his head toward her. Excuse me? She stood, straightened her blazer. You think the investors are going to side with you over the person who saved the company 10 times over? You think they won't know this was you doing? She glanced at me. Or worse, ours. Mark nodded, pale. The logs show you revoked Kathy's credentials. The paper trail's clear. I crossed my arms. Clock's ticking, Graham. He stared at me, pure loathing, pure defeat. But also acceptance, because he knew he was cornered. Fine, he growled. Draft the damn agreement. I smiled. Already did. I pulled a fresh set of documents from the folder and slid them across the table. Signed by me, waiting only for his signature. Graham's hands trembled as he picked up the pen. For a second, I thought he might throw it across the room, but he didn't. He signed. One line, then the next, and the next. When he finished, he shoved the papers back at me. It's done. I leaned forward, voice low, calm, lethal. No, Graham. Now, I'm done. The next morning felt surreal. I wasn't walking into Velocity Dynamics as an employee anymore. Not as someone who could be ordered around, ignored, or erased. I was walking in as something they never imagined I could become. An owner, a board member, their equal. Scratch that. Their superior. As the glass doors slid open, a wave of nervous glances rippled through the lobby. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups hovered halfway to mouths. Junior developers stared, whispering behind monitors. Oh, they knew. Word spreads fast when your CEO has to sign away half the company's crown jewel just to keep the lights on. Rachel was waiting by the elevators. She gave me a look. Half amusement, half relief. Never seen Graham that pale before. She smirked. Better get used to it, I replied. Might be his new natural color. The elevator doors opened, the executive floor. The air was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. I stepped into the boardroom like I owned it. Which, technically, I did. At the far end of the table sat Graham, still CEO, still pretending he had control, but everything about him looked smaller. His tie was straightened this time, his hair combed, but the confidence? Gone. Kathy, he greeted, forcing a strained smile. Welcome back. Thanks, I said, settling into the chair, my chair now, opposite him. Though, technically I didn't come back. I upgraded a few board members, chuckled under their breath, quickly covering it with coughs. I laid the folder on the table, the same one from last night, now stamped, notarized, filed, and distributed to every shareholder. Per the agreement, I said, flipping it open. PulseLink is fully restored. System integrity, confirmed. Client operations, back online as of 6:42 a.m. Investor confidence, stabilized. You're welcome. Graham nodded stiffly. Much appreciated. I tilted my head. Oh, but let's be clear. This isn't charity. This is oversight. I let the word hang, watching him flinch. I turned to the board. As of today, I am reinstated as Chief Technology Officer, with an additional seat on the board and 50% intellectual ownership of PulseLink and all associated derivatives. One of the board members, an older man named Whitaker, cleared his throat. The documents are in order. It's official. Perfect, I smiled. Now let's talk about changes. I tapped my laptop. The big screen behind me flickered to life, showing a slide labeled Internal Threat Audit Report. PulseLink AI Security Logs. Graham's face blanched. He knew what was coming. 6 months ago, I began. PulseLink detected anomalies, unauthorized file accesses, midnight logins, attempts to clone sensitive architecture. The slide changed. Timestamps, IP addresses, usernames. His usernames. A wave of murmurs spread through the boardroom. These aren't external attacks, I continued. These were internal, directed at PulseLink's core repository, specifically by the CEO. Someone gasped. Another muttered, unbelievable. Graham jumped to his feet. This is out of context. I was reviewing. I held up a hand. Sit. My voice was calm, firm, absolute. You don't speak until I finish. He froze. Saturday. First time in 7 years he'd ever obeyed a command from me. Per Section 8 of the shareholder agreement, I continued, any executive engaging in unauthorized IP tampering, sabotage, or behavior deemed a conflict of interest is subject to immediate disciplinary review. I clicked again. The next slide appeared. A simple headline. Recommendation, removal of CEO Graham Foster. Dead silence. The board chair leaned forward. Kathy, you're formally recommending termination. Correction, I said. I'm demanding it. Graham's eyes darted around the room, desperate for support. But the room had shifted. The board wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. Whitaker sighed. Given the evidence and the situation, he glanced at the others. Heads nodded. It's not just Kathy's decision. It's the board's now. Another member, Elena, chimed in. He jeopardized our core product, our investors, our reputation. This isn't just reckless. It's grounds for dismissal. Graham slammed his hands on the table. You can't do this. I built this company. I met his gaze. No, Graham. I built it. You just signed the checks. The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Graham Foster is removed as CEO of Velocity Dynamics. Security was called. He stood, trembling, furious. And for a moment, I thought he might lunge at me. But he didn't. He just glared. That same glare bullies give when they realize the kid they pushed too far finally hit back. "This isn't over," he hissed as security let him out. I smiled. "Oh, Graham, it absolutely is." I turned back to the board, calm, composed. But inside? Oh, inside I was electric. "Let's begin," I said. "There's a company to rebuild. Properly this time." The news spread faster than wildfire. By noon, every desk in Velocity Dynamics knew. Graham's gone. Kathy's back. But not just back. She's running the place now. Did you see the security walk him out? Unreal. Even the junior developers, the same ones who used to avoid eye contact when Graham passed, were openly gossiping now, peeking over monitors, whispering in the hallways. I wasn't sure if it was respect, fear, or just disbelief. Maybe a mix of all three. But I didn't have time to care. There was work to do. Real work. The first order of business? Damage control. The client losses from yesterday's outage were already piling up. Legal was in a frenzy, drafting apologies and revised contracts. Customer support lines were lit up like a Christmas tree. But as bad as that was, it was fixable. Clients weren't angry because PulseLink failed. They were angry because the people running it were incompetent. Now that problem had a solution. By 2 p.m., I was in the war room. Glass walls, whiteboards everywhere, and monitors tracking system recovery metrics. "Status report," I said, looking at the engineering leads. One stood. "Core systems are stable. APIs are back up. Database integrity confirmed. No data loss. Client portals? 87% functional. The remaining are minor UI bugs. Nothing critical." I nodded. "Good. Push it to 100 by end of day." Then I turned to the operations manager. "Legal notices?" She sighed. 3 clients are threatening lawsuits, but after hearing Graham's gone, 2 already backed down. The 3rd is on the fence. "Let me guess." I tapped my pen. "Centurion Freight." She blinked. "Yes, how did you—" "Because I built this company," I said, not even trying to hide the edge in my voice. "I know every client better than Graham ever did." Just as we were finally stabilizing, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, blocked caller ID. I debated ignoring it, but something in my gut told me not to. "Kathy speaking." A smooth voice answered. Male, polished, too polished. "Ms. Reyes, we should talk." "Who is this?" "Call me Vincent. I represent interests." "Interests," I echoed. "You'll need to be more specific." A short pause. "I'm authorized to discuss a potential acquisition." I frowned. "Of what? Velocity Dynamics? Not for sale." "Oh, no. The voice chuckled. "Not the company. PulseLink. My stomach tightened. "Not interested." "It's a generous offer. Our client is prepared to pay 9 figures. I stood, pacing toward the window. "Tell your client that PulseLink isn't for sale. Not today. Not ever." The voice remained calm. "You might want to reconsider. This isn't a friendly request." There it was. The shift in tone. The threat underneath the velvet. "Was that supposed to scare me?" I asked, turning from the window. "Because it's adorable." Another pause. "Think it over, Ms. Reyes. You'll be hearing from us again. Soon." Click. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment processing, then immediately opened my laptop. Logged into the PulseLink security console. Ran an audit. Nothing. Clean, no breaches, no anomalies. "Not yet," I muttered. But if someone wanted PulseLink badly enough to offer 9 figures and make threats when that failed, This wasn't just some random opportunist. This was organized, strategic, calculated. And if there's one thing I knew from building PulseLink, threats that escalate don't stop. Rachel walks in. She paused, noticing my expression. Something's wrong. I nodded. Very. I summarized the call. Her face shifted from confusion to concern to something sharper. You think they're serious? She asked. I didn't answer immediately, just stared at the PulseLink dashboard, the system that had become both my greatest achievement and, now, my biggest target. I think, I finally said, that we just stepped onto a much bigger playing field, and the rules just changed. My inbox chimed. A new email. No sender. No subject. Just one line in the body. Check your back door. TikTok. My blood ran cold. I immediately pulled up the PulseLink server logs, scrolled, scanned, and there it was. A ping. External. Tiny. Almost undetectable. But there. Someone had found it. The back door I built. The same one that brought Graham to his knees. Someone was knocking. The moment I saw that ping, the unauthorized access attempt, my hands went cold. Check your back door. TikTok. It wasn't subtle. It was a message, a warning, a countdown. I slammed my laptop shut, stood, and locked the conference room door. Rachel blinked. Kathy, what is it? Someone found it, I said, my voice flat. The failsafe, the one I used against Graham. Her face drained of color. Can they use it against us? I shook my head. Not yet. Not unless they have the right credentials. But if they're knocking, they're already closer than they should be. Who? She asked. Who has the resources to even find it? I stared at the PulseLink dashboard. All systems were stable, for now. But it felt like looking at a calm ocean, knowing there was a tsunami just over the horizon. Someone bigger than a corporate rival, I said. This isn't just business. This is organized. Strategic. Professional. Rachel crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. They want PulseLink. No, I corrected. They want control. Of PulseLink. Of me. Of the data. Of everything. I pulled open the emergency operations terminal. Something only I had access to. A hidden layer beneath PulseLink's main infrastructure. Typed in a string of commands. Initiate. Full system lockdown protocol. Confirm Y or N. My fingers hovered. Locking it would prevent anyone, even legitimate users, from touching core systems. But it would also cripple the company temporarily. Kathy, Rachel said, watching me. If you do this, it's gonna hurt. Bad. I nodded. Yeah. But not as bad as letting them in. I hit Y lockdown initiated. PulseLink's core dimmed. Not down, but sealed. Fortified. Nothing in, nothing out. Like slamming every vault door shut at once. My phone buzzed. Another blocked call. I declined it, then another, and another. An email appeared seconds later. No subject. Just one sentence. Wrong move. Now we escalate. The PulseLink firewall lit up like fireworks. Port scans, injection attempts, DDoS floods, credential stuffing. They were throwing everything at us. And this wasn't a random hacker in a basement. This was methodical, industrial-grade cyber warfare. Jesus, Rachel muttered, watching the attack map flare up with incoming threats from 6 countries. This is bad, she said. Really bad. It's not bad, I replied, typing rapidly. It's an opportunity. She frowned. An opportunity? Yeah, I said. They've shown their hand. Now, we trace it. I spun up PulseLink's deep trace protocols, the same AI-driven analysis that had caught Graham's midnight intrusions. But this time, I wasn't tracking a clumsy CEO. This time, it was professionals, and that made them predictable. The AI flagged a pattern, repeated routing through a specific server cluster in Zurich, followed by a bounce to Singapore, then to Buenos Aires. But Zurich was the weak link. A private cloud server leased by a shell corporation. A shell corporation registered to Vanguard Strategic Holdings. I blinked. No way. Rachel leaned over. Who's that? I turned to her. A private equity firm. A massive one. They've been quietly buying up cybersecurity companies for years, trying to consolidate the market. So, they wanted PulseLink? She asked. I shook my head. Number they wanted me out. So they could own it. Control it. License it globally. At their terms, not ours. I kept digging. The AI flagged a document. Poorly scrubbed metadata. An internal memo. Objective: acquire PulseLink by any means. Phase 1, remove creator. Phase 2, force acquisition under distressed conditions. Holy, Rachel whispered. They backed Graham, I said, realizing it as the pieces clicked into place. He wasn't just greedy. He was leveraged. A new notification popped. Trace complete. Identity confirmed. Vincent Carter, Director of Cyber Assets, Vanguard Strategic Holdings. There you are, I whispered. I opened a secure channel, not through PulseLink, but through a secondary protocol I had built years ago. A dead man's switch. Loaded the compiled logs, the attack traces, the memo, the financial records. Sent it to 3 places simultaneously. 1. The FBI's Cybercrime Division. 2. The SEC. 3. TechCrunch, Wired, and Forbes. Let's see how they like being exposed, I muttered. The moment the package went out, the attack slowed. Then, stopped. Dead. A minute later, my phone rang. This time, not a blocked number. It was Vincent. I answered. Kathy Reyes speaking. A pause. Then his voice, cold, measured, us but strained. That was unnecessary. No, Vincent. What was unnecessary was thinking you could strong-arm me. Or PulseLink. This isn't over. Oh, I think it is, I said, smiling. Check the news in 5 minutes. And maybe check with your legal team. Goodbye, Vincent. I hung up. By sundown, the headlines were everywhere. Massive cyber takeover attempt foiled. PulseLink creator exposes private equity sabotage. SEC launches investigation into Vanguard Holdings. FBI Cybercrime Division confirms data theft, extortion attempts. Velocity Dynamics stock didn't crash. In fact, it surged. Investors realized the problem wasn't PulseLink. It was the parasites trying to own it. As for me, my name wasn't just on the PulseLink patents now. It was everywhere. The architect, the savior, the one who didn't just build the system, but defended it against everything. Technology is only as secure as the person who builds it. Ownership matters. Boundaries matter. Knowing your worth matters. They tried to erase me, tried to take what I built. Instead, they taught me just how unstoppable I really am. My name is Mia Dalka, and 3 months ago, my boss looked me straight in the eye, smirked in front of the entire product team, and said, "This is why women don't lead." Then he highlighted my entire folder. 10 months of research, diagrams, performance projections, and code, and pressed delete. Everyone in that meeting room froze. Some glanced at their screens, pretending not to notice. Others held their breath. One guy actually laughed under it. But me? I blinked once. Then my phone rang. And when I answered it, what I said made him go pale. Let me take you back to where this really began, because these stories don't start with the final insult. They start much earlier, with subtle patterns that no one calls out until they become impossible to ignore. 14 months ago, I joined Elixis Labs as a senior systems engineer. Not a glamorous title. not something you put in a headline. But behind the scenes, I was the architect behind a product that was going to reshape the way hospitals manage critical patient data. It was secure, scalable, and, most importantly, human-centered. I was brought in by the former CTO, Julian Arman, who left 3 weeks after I started, and that's when Logan Riker took over. Logan was sharp, charismatic in that overconfident, smug sort of way. He shook my hand the first day he came on board and said, "So, you're the girl who likes databases. Cute." I thought I misheard. But over the next few weeks, I realized that was just his style. The kind of guy who thought inclusion meant bringing women in to decorate the meeting table. At first, I ignored it. I was here to do a job, not to win anyone's approval. I buried myself in the product, the back end, the user feedback loops, the AI logic for flagging anomalies in patient vitals. Clients started noticing the improvements. Our beta demo scored 18% better than projected in usability. Hospital administrators requested more updates. And somewhere along the way, Logan started asking for status checks twice a day. But he never asked for my ideas. He never asked how I got the numbers. He just hovered, waiting for something to go wrong so he could pounce. One day during a product review, I presented a streamlined solution for data encryption that could have reduced storage costs by nearly $2.6 million annually across our partner network. Instead of reviewing the code, Logan interrupted me with, "Mia, do you have any actual engineering background or just enthusiasm?" My jaw clenched. I wanted to scream, but I knew better. Because the worst thing you can do in rooms like that is react. So I nodded, thanked him for the feedback, and kept working. Over the next 4 months, I compiled everything: codebase, analytics, integration logs, into a secured folder. I worked nights, weekends, while Logan was golfing with investors. I built what was essentially the spine of the company's future platform. And then came the meeting. Quarterly planning, full leadership team, investors looped in by video. I was told to walk them through the product vision, but right as I connected my screen, Logan cut in. "Actually," he said, "before Mia presents, let me show you something interesting." He walked to the front of the room, took the mouse from my hand like I was a child, navigated to my folder, and said it. "This is why women don't lead." Click, delete. I felt my stomach drop. Not because I couldn't recover the work, I could. It was backed up. But because of the message he just sent. He wanted to humiliate me, publicly, casually, like erasing me was a performance art. But that's when my phone rang. I didn't hesitate. I picked it up. "Yes," I said calmly. "I'll take the CTO position at your company. I accept in the room?" Silent. Logan blinked. His smirk faltered. "Wait, what?" I turned to him and said, "You just made my exit easier than I ever imagined." But trust me, that's just the moment that changed everything. The real story? It's what led up to that call. The choices, the betrayals, the secret I'd been keeping about who was really watching me work behind the scenes. In the next chapter, I'll tell you how that job offer came to be, and how Logan unknowingly helped secure it himself. Because sometimes the most satisfying revenge is when they hand you the weapon themselves. 3 months before that meeting, the one where Logan deleted my folder and told an entire room of executives that this is why women don't lead, I was sitting alone in the break room, microwaving leftover Thai food, when someone I barely knew sat down across from me. Her name was Neha Ramesh, senior UX researcher, usually quiet, polite, invisible by choice. She looked up from her salad and said, "Hey, what you said in that product huddle yesterday about ethical data filtering for misdiagnoses? That was brilliant." I blinked, surprised. I didn't even realize she was listening. "Thanks," I said. "I wasn't sure anyone noticed." She smiled. "A couple people noticed. One of them asked for your name. That someone turned out to be Cora Eastman, co-founder of Ethratech, one of the fastest-growing medtech firms in the region." Cora had been sitting in on a product walkthrough as a visiting consultant for a hospital partnership we were piloting. I didn't even realize she was there. But apparently, she noticed what Logan didn't, because the next morning I received a LinkedIn message. Short, precise. Hi, Mia. Would love to hear more about your system architecture work on that Elixis prototype. Do you have 15 minutes sometime this week? I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I took a screenshot and emailed it to myself, just in case. We spoke that Thursday. It was supposed to be 15 minutes. It turned into 90. She asked smart, probing questions about my data model, my real-time sync system, the latency issues I solved during the rollout. And when I told her that I'd done most of it solo, she paused and said, "You realize that's CTO level work, right?" I laughed. It sounded ridiculous at the time. I was still stuck being talked over in meetings where Logan referred to me as database girl. But Cora wasn't joking. "You think 10 steps ahead," she said. "Most engineers can't think past the next sprint. You're solving structural problems." After that call, she didn't offer me a job. Not right away. She just said, "Stay in touch and keep doing what you're doing." I did. Over the next 2 months, we exchanged emails. I shared articles, white papers, updates on new client feedback from the hospitals. She asked deeper questions. Never pushy, never aggressive, just watching. And meanwhile, things at Elixis were getting worse. Logan started taking credit in front of execs for the same architecture I built. He'd say things like, "We've been restructuring back-end integrations," even though he hadn't written a single line of code. When I privately confronted him about it once, he shrugged and said, "Leadership is about narrative, Mia. Not details. Learn to sell or stay invisible." That was the moment I knew I was never going to be promoted. Not by him. Not in that building. It didn't matter what I built. He saw me as an obstacle to his spotlight. So I stopped waiting for his approval and started documenting everything. Not for HR. Not to fight him, but for me. I compiled detailed records of every innovation I was responsible for. I built a private portfolio, architecture maps, live demos, process documentation, all detached from proprietary Elixis material, but showcasing the thought process behind my work. And every few weeks, I'd send a small update to Cora. Not a pitch. Just a, "Hey, thought this might interest you. Here's how I solved this challenge." Then one day, I got the call. "We're ready to expand," she said. "We've been scouting candidates for CTO, and you've been top of our internal shortlist since March." I thought I misheard. "CTO?" "Yes," she said. "And I'm not offering this out of charity or politics. You've been operating at CTO level. You just haven't had the title or the respect." She told me they'd matched my current salary, doubled it, and were offering full strategic control over their next-gen platform, plus equity. All I had to do was say yes. And I didn't. At least not right away. Because I knew something Logan didn't. He still had one last chance to prove what kind of leader he was. One last chance to rise with me, instead of trying to bury me. I gave him that chance in the form of a final presentation. A real-time analytics dashboard that would cut diagnostic lag in critical care centers by 42%. It was the same folder he deleted in front of the entire team. The moment he did, I answered my ringing phone and said what I'd been waiting months to say. Yes, I accept the CTO position. But what Logan didn't know, what no one in that meeting knew, is that he himself had been part of the reason I was hired. Because sometimes your enemies don't just underestimate you, they accidentally help you rise. In the next chapter, I'll show you exactly how Logan's behavior during those final months made Cora's decision even easier, and how his obsession with control became the very thing that destroyed his credibility. Because when you treat someone like they're invisible, you often forget they're watching. And sometimes, so is everyone else. By the time I accepted the CTO offer from Ethratech, I wasn't angry anymore. That surprised me. I thought I would be. I thought I'd feel the burning need for revenge or justice. But instead, All I felt was clarity. Because Logan didn't just delete a folder, he deleted the last illusion I had that people like him could ever be reasoned with. He didn't want partnership. He wanted ownership. Of credit, of control, of perception. And the most dangerous part? He was good at it. At least, at first. After he deleted my work in that meeting, the room fell silent. No one spoke up. No one protested. People stared at their laptops or the floor. I knew most of them didn't agree, but no one wanted to challenge him. That's how people like Logan survive. Through silence. But what he didn't know was that his silence had been leaking cracks for months. And now, I want to show you exactly how he destroyed himself. One misstep at a time. Let's go back 6 months. Back when our lead client, Paragon Health Systems, began preparing to scale their pilot across 5 new hospitals, I was responsible for that integration. They loved the responsiveness, the intuitive interface, the load time improvements, and they sent in written feedback, twice, mentioning me by name. Logan accidentally left those parts out in the executive summaries. He reworded their praise to say, "The Elixis engineering leadership team has exceeded expectations. There was no team. It was just me." I said nothing. I kept building, kept tracking, kept documenting. Because I had started to see it clearly. Logan wasn't just ignoring my work. He was trying to absorb it. He started showing up to meetings unprepared, then using my slides. He began saying things like, "Our back-end strategist suggested this," never naming me, never giving me a seat at the table. But he didn't realize that others had noticed too. Small things. Neha once overheard him rewriting one of my code commits into his weekly report. She never said a word, but the next day she quietly slipped a sticky note onto my desk. It said, "Keep your own copy, just in case." Another time, our junior analyst, Jaden, saw Logan accidentally forward a client message thanking me, and then watched him delete the thread before the all hands. Little things. But they were adding up. I never asked anyone to take sides. I didn't start a whisper campaign or collect allies. I didn't have to. Because the longer Logan tried to silence my presence, the more visible I became to the people who actually paid attention. And then came the turning point. 2 weeks before that disastrous meeting, we had a cross-department workshop with our new AI consultant. He was young, maybe mid-30s, sharp, and clearly annoyed when Logan tried to open the session. "Actually," he said, flipping through the onboarding deck, "can we hear from Mia instead? She's listed as the architect on most of this." Logan's smile froze for half a second. He recovered, of course. He always did. But it was the first visible crack in his armor. He said, "Mia's good with the technical weeds. But for strategy, Weeds?" I said, before I could stop myself. I met his eyes and held them. Everyone turned. I didn't raise my voice, didn't get emotional. I just said, "You mean the data model that just secured us a $2.1 million expansion contract?" Silence. Then Jaden coughed into his notebook to hide a laugh. Logan didn't respond. He pivoted. He always pivoted. But something had shifted. After that workshop, I started noticing the questions clients asked were directed at me, not him. Follow-ups came to my inbox. Strategy suggestions were forwarded to my private extension. Logan hated it. I could see it in the way he began nitpicking my tone in emails, ceasing executives on simple follow-ups, treating every minor issue like a leadership flaw. But here's the irony. All the while he was trying to control the story, he was writing a new one. For someone else. Cora was still watching. She had quietly attended that same workshop. She saw everything. And when I told her later about the deleted folder, she didn't gasp. She didn't sound surprised. She just said, "And that's why your leadership will look nothing like his." By the time I stepped out of that conference room, after calmly accepting the CTO position and announcing my resignation, Logan looked like someone who had just watched the floor collapse under his feet. And yet, he still didn't get it. He stood up, raised his voice like he was reading from a policy manual. "This is highly unprofessional. You can't just quit in the middle of a department meeting. There are procedures. Protocols." I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. Instead, I turned to Gideon Talley, our COO, who had been silent the entire time, arms crossed, watching everything. He didn't say much either, just gave the smallest nod. Logan sputtered something about breach of conduct, about NDA clauses, about poaching. That's when I showed him the offer on my phone. "There's nothing proprietary being taken," I said. "And if clients choose to follow a person over a brand, that's not theft. That's trust." And with that, I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the parking lot. I just left. It was 9:42 a.m. on a Thursday. By noon, my LinkedIn inbox had 15 new messages. By 5 p.m., I was on a video call with the Ethratech onboarding team. And by Friday morning, the tremors had started inside Elixis. I didn't hear about it directly. But people talk. They always do. Especially when things start falling apart. The first thing I heard? Logan tried to recover my deleted folder. Apparently, he spent an hour with IT trying to roll back the deletion, only to discover that I'd removed my access and backed up every non-proprietary version of my architecture notes to a personal secure drive weeks ago. All completely legal. All clearly documented. He demanded that someone on my team reconstruct the product roadmap from scratch. But here's the thing. There was no team. I was the team. Every person who had contributed to the technical build was either reporting to me or had been looped in because I had asked them to be. There was no backup Mia. And worse, he didn't know where anything was. He didn't even understand how the architecture worked. He had always assumed I was just implementing the ideas he approved. Without me, there were no ideas. Neha told me, quietly, through Signal, that Logan spent the entire day walking from desk to desk with a forced smile, asking people to step up and own the vision. By Monday, 2 client accounts had requested meetings with someone familiar with the original system architect. When informed that I had left, one of them paused and asked, "So, who's in charge now?" That question echoed in more places than Logan expected. I wasn't at Elixis anymore, but my absence created a vacuum that couldn't be spun or dismissed. Because leadership, real leadership, doesn't disappear when you leave the room. Fake leadership does. By Wednesday, I got a message from Gideon. "I know this may be a long shot, but would you be open to a transition consultancy contract? The rollout is in trouble." I read that message twice. The same company that allowed my work to be deleted in front of 24 people now wanted me back, quietly, to fix what was broken. I didn't respond right away, not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because I needed to be sure that I wasn't walking backward into the same fire I'd escaped. Meanwhile, Ethratech was moving fast. I met with the executive team, reviewed our strategic goals, and presented a roadmap that mirrored what I'd tried and failed to implement at Elixis. Only this time, no one interrupted me mid-sentence. No one downplayed the user testing. No one deleted anything. They listened. They asked questions. They valued the process. And the craziest part? In just 3 days, I had made more progress with a lean team of 7 than I'd made in 3 months under Logan's command. Because when you stop having to defend your existence, you get to actually do the work. The next Friday, I got another message. This one from Jaden. "Logan's panicking. Client meetings are imploding. Paragon asked if they can follow you to Ethratech. He tried to lie and say you weren't really the lead. They didn't buy it." I stared at that message for a long moment. Not with pride, not with gloating, but with quiet realization. All the long nights, all the dismissals, all the times I was told to stay in my lane. They hadn't been wasted. They had built something solid, something undeniable. Because when your value is real, it doesn't vanish when someone presses delete. I didn't gloat when the first Elixis client jumped ship. I didn't send a message. I didn't make a call. All I did was update my LinkedIn profile to reflect my new position. Chief Technology Officer, Tech. That was enough. Because the thing about clients, real clients, the ones who value results over titles, is that they pay attention. They remember who answered their 9 p.m. emails, who followed up after system crashes, who built tools that actually made their work better. And they noticed when I disappeared. The first to reach out was Dr. Kwan, the director of technology at Paragon Health Systems. "We were told you resigned," he said on the call. "But we both know that's not the full story." He didn't sound angry, just tired. "We had questions about your data integrity system," he continued. "Logan said it wasn't critical, but we disagree. We were hoping you could walk us through it at your new firm." I paused. Not because I wasn't willing, but because it still felt surreal. 1 week earlier, I was being publicly humiliated. Now, clients were following me. Not because I'd asked them to, but because they trusted me. It wasn't about revenge. It was about value. And Logan had no idea how to hold on to it. By the second week, 3 more clients reached out. And back at Elixis, things were unraveling. I got the first true confirmation from Neha, an encrypted email she sent from her personal account. Logan called an emergency meeting, blamed the tech fallout on poor documentation, and said you left things disorganized. Half the team stared at him like he'd grown another head. She said Jaden had spoken up. "Actually," he told the room, "Mia documented everything. I saw it." It was quiet for a few seconds, Neha wrote. Then someone asked the question that finally broke the illusion. If Mia wasn't doing the work, why is everything collapsing without her? Logan couldn't answer. Because deep down he knew. He hadn't just deleted a folder. He'd deleted his own safety net. See, Logan never understood that real leadership isn't loud. It's not bravado in a boardroom or smooth-talking investors. Real leadership is consistency, delivery, trust built over time with people who remember how you treated them when no one was watching. And one by one, people started remembering. At Tech, we were moving fast. I was given full autonomy over the product roadmap. I built a team of hand-picked engineers, some of whom reached out after seeing where I landed. 2 of them were from Elixis. They'd had enough. We didn't need to steal clients. We didn't need to smear Logan. We just had to do better work. That's what made it worse for him. Because there was no scandal, no legal breach, no memo he could point to and say, "See? She cheated." There was only the quiet movement of trust. From him to me. And it was eating him alive. By week 3, the board at Elixis called an unscheduled meeting. I didn't attend, obviously. But I knew it happened. Because Gideon messaged me again. "Would you be open to a conversation?" "We're evaluating leadership changes." I never replied. The next day, the news broke internally. Logan had been removed from product oversight pending review. Neha sent me a 1-line update. The man who said women don't lead just lost everything because he refused to follow one. I stared at that sentence longer than I cared to admit. It didn't make me happy. Not exactly. Because this wasn't a victory I'd planned. It was a consequence he created himself. That's what some people never understand. They think when others succeed, it's luck. That people only rise by taking something from them. Logan thought silencing me would keep him in power. But silencing people doesn't erase their impact. And when people feel seen, heard, and respected, they remember the ones who treated them like they mattered, and the ones who didn't. By the end of my first month at Tech, we'd signed contracts with 5 former Elixis clients. Logan's product? Dead in the water. Our prototype? Already being tested in 3 pilot hospitals with overwhelmingly positive feedback. But the most powerful moment came quietly. Neha, now leading a research pod at Tech, stopped by my office. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling. "You know," she said, "when you left, I realized something. The only reason I stayed as long as I did was because you were there. You made it feel possible. I swallowed hard, because I hadn't known that. Not really. It wasn't just that you built great systems, she continued. It was that you made us believe we could too. That's when it hit me. Leadership isn't about controlling people. It's about inspiring them. And sometimes all it takes to lead is to leave a place that never let you. 2 months after I left Elixis Labs, I received an invitation to speak at a regional tech leadership summit. The theme was Human-Centered Innovation, Leading Beyond Metrics. I smiled when I read the title. If you've followed my journey this far, you'll understand why. The summit had always been Logan's playground. He was a regular panelist, the kind of speaker who dazzled with big words and buzz phrases, always walking the stage like it was built just for him. So imagine my surprise when, a week before the event, I saw the updated schedule. Keynote, Mia Dalka, CTO, Ethratech. Panel moderator, Cora Eastman, co-founder, Ethratech. And beneath that, a smaller workshop listing. From engineer to executive, reclaiming your seat at the table. Canceled. Presenter, Logan Riker. That's when I knew. He was still trying to crawl back into the spotlight, but the room had moved on without him. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't tweet. I didn't comment on LinkedIn. Because the most elegant revenge is when you don't have to say a word. The truth walks into the room before you do. But the full story of Logan's fall, that came from a place I didn't expect. It was Gideon Talley, the former COO, who called me. His voice was quieter than I remembered. I owe you an apology, he said. I should have stepped in when Logan deleted your work. I saw it happen, and I did nothing. That silence I remembered from the conference room? Turns out it haunted more people than just me. We underestimated you, he continued. We assumed leadership looked like noise, authority, control. But you built trust without demanding attention. He paused. Then he asked the question I never expected to hear. Would you consider consulting with Elixis again? Just for transition support? We've lost key accounts. Logan's contract wasn't renewed. We're trying to rebuild. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was bitter, but because I'd finally learned something. Not every bridge needs to be burned. Some just don't need to be rebuilt. So I said the only thing that felt right. I appreciate the call, but I'm exactly where I need to be. And I was. By then, Ethratech had grown faster than we projected. We'd landed 3 more hospital contracts, expanded our engineering team, and launched a beta program that was already outperforming legacy systems in speed, security, and user satisfaction. More importantly, my team didn't just work for me. They believed in what we were building together. No one questioned why I was in charge. No one asked if I had the background. No one tried to delete my contributions, because when you finally walk into a room that was built for collaboration, not control, you stop surviving and start thriving. But the moment that truly marked the end of the story, it came through a message request on LinkedIn. From Logan. No subject line, just a single sentence. I didn't realize what I was destroying until it was gone. I read it twice, then a third time. There was no ask, no apology. Just a quiet recognition that everything he'd tried to erase had outlasted him. I didn't reply, because sometimes you don't need to respond. Sometimes the answer is already written. In client loyalty, in job titles earned, in silent conference rooms where your absence is louder than anyone else's voice. And I want you to know this. If you've ever been told you're too emotional to lead, if someone's tried to erase your work, belittle your presence, or silence your voice, if you've been made to feel like you need to shrink in order to survive, don't. Because your greatest power is not your ability to fight them. It's your ability to outlast them, to build while they try to tear down, to rise without dragging anyone with you. Logan taught me that revenge doesn't need fireworks. It just needs patience. And faith that when you lead with integrity, The right people will follow, and the wrong ones will expose themselves. Today, 2 years after I walked out of that boardroom with nothing but a ringing phone and my dignity, I lead a company that's reshaping the healthcare tech landscape. And Logan? He hasn't worked in leadership since. Because when the industry finally looked past the noise, they saw the truth.